I have spent the last week following a cop around GTA 5. I couldn't have imagined the stuff that would happen in this video, so make sure you stay tuned all the way to the end. I started off by finding a police car I wanted to follow and tailed it. At first he was driving normally, stopping at every traffic light and following the speeding laws, but then again his lights aren't on, so he's clearly not in a rush or in need of going to a job. He accelerates away from these traffic lights incredibly quickly. This could be one of the strategies the law enforcement use to try and get people to feel safe and sort of try and break traffic laws, but it didn't work. I kept following him around the city, waiting for something to happen. And then at these traffic lights, it did. We're officially in our first police chase. This red car, I believe, wheel span at the traffic lights and the policeman just wanted to pull him over and check. But as this is Grand Theft Auto, they decided the best thing to do was pull out their guns immediately and offer a threat. Then the main driver, let's call him Steve, started to pursue the red car without his partner with him. He quickly had to stop to let his partner get back in. With the two of them now in pursuit, nothing could stop them. They were going past cars at ridiculous speeds and gonna catch up to the red car. They collide with him here and almost get him to pull over, but he's just too quick. He goes round the corner, and our star police car has an accident, but he's able to get out of it okay and continue the pursuit. After ramming him in the back, he makes a fast right-hand turn. This red car really wants to get away from us, but we're following him anyway. And just when I think he might have got away, the garbage lorry stops him in his tracks. He gets out and starts firing at the police officers. The police return fire and are able to drop him with little effort.
Suspect's dead.
After reporting to head office that the suspect is dead and making sure they watch him for a while to make sure he's down, they get back in the car. And immediately, we're on our way to our next pursuit. It was interesting to see how careless they were crashing into the public's cars. They didn't seem to care at all. The main thing was getting to the next job. We were racing down every straight and turning corners faster than I've ever turned them before. The police car was driving in loops and didn't seem to know exactly where he was going. Steve might have had some bad information about where this suspect is. We took a turn down this side road and I thought the pursuit must be near here, but I was wrong. We turned straight back onto a main road and kept heading uphill. Then turned right again. We were genuinely going in loops for a good 5 minutes. Then disaster struck. He crashed into a parked car. But this definitely wasn't going to stop Steve driving around in his loops until he got better information on where this suspect is. And another big crash into the side of the wall. But this is okay, it helps Steve make the left-hand turn he needs. Now he's got better information to get to the pursuit. And with the open road, he puts his foot down. But a car comes out at the red lights. We make a right to adjust and continue on our way. I almost fly into the back of Steve here, but it's alright, I didn't crash into him. I knew as soon as I crashed into the police officer, I would get stars and it would corrupt the whole experiment. Another big crash into a pedestrian's car. And we arrive at the scene. The police officers jump out and start firing their guns. One police officer's down, our partner, oh no! Then Steve jumps back in the car, not having time to wait for his partner, and heads to the next chase solo. It was really difficult for me to keep up with him, but I did the best I can, and luckily he crashed into a side post, so I was able to get him. This is the fastest Steve had driven, so I was really struggling to keep up with him. And a massive crash into the side of a tree. Steve reverses out, but his car is not unharmed. His front right wheel is completely destroyed and you can see the skid marks on the road. This dramatically decreased his pace, but he was still determined to get to the next job. Suddenly, up the hill, he gets a boost of speed somehow. I don't know how this happened, but then immediately on the flat, we slowed back down again. Being en route to a job at this pace was really funny to me. I'd like to think Steve was driving slowly so he didn't alert the suspect that we were on our way. However, he did have the sirens blaring, so that completely contradicted itself. At this point, Steve has definitely received some better information on where the next job is, makes a U-turn, and we head straight to it. When we arrive, there's already police on the scene, and I can hear a chopper overhead. Bullets are already flying, so Steve very carefully ducks round the corner. But nothing scares Steve. He jumped straight out and was returning fire. It was great to see how professional Steve stayed throughout this entire pursuit. It didn't seem like anything would faze him. He was happy to return fire and go to any job even though his car was damaged, and we have no idea what's happened to his partner. After taking out the 2 suspects, he reports back to main office, making sure the bodies are definitely down and are no longer a threat to himself or the public. Steve decided to head back to his car and set off once again. With this job complete, I thought we might be heading on to another one. However, with the car as damaged as it was and the speeds we were driving, he wasn't going there anytime quickly. He also made a very questionable decision to drive down the beach's path. Now, this was a very strange decision, and he actually ended up hitting quite a few pedestrians and ruining a lot of their days. Despite this, I followed him carefully to find out where he was going. As you can see, the pedestrians are very upset by his presence, and he's just hit one! And another one falls. Even for a police car with his sirens on, this is incredibly reckless driving. It did make me think, has he received some news about his partner? Did his partner not survive the pursuit that he left him at? To me, that seems like the best reason for this sort of driving. He could be going into a manic depressive state. He then turns down a path that I assume is normally used by rollerbladers, and was very careful to stick to the cycle path only. After we'd driven along the beach, we thankfully pulled back onto a road. However, I really don't think Steve's car is up to the job anymore. He needs to head back to the police station. So that I could gauge Steve's speed, I went into first person and realised he was rarely getting above 10 miles an hour. I pulled alongside him so I could see his mental state. He seemed to be fine and putting on a brave face, however, I really don't think he was okay. Steve dangerously turns through all this traffic, slightly clipping the back of another person's car. Then mounts the curb and heads straight across the junction. At no point during this process did Steve ever reach above 10 miles an hour. And then my worst fears were confirmed. Steve decided to turn onto the highway. At 10 miles an hour, this is extremely dangerous, so I hoped he had a plan. I pulled out in front of him just to sort of give him a look and say, "Are you sure about this?" But Steve didn't flinch. He was getting on that highway. As we were pulling onto the highway, luckily people heard his sirens and gave way. I'm still incredibly worried about him. He must be feeling incredibly sad about his partner and how he was left behind. Steve drove down this road for ages like this, slowing down all the cars, which made me think, maybe he got information about a pursuit up ahead, and his job is to slow down the traffic so they don't interfere with the pursuit and put their lives at risk. Steve is once again our hero, saving the public from a potentially fatal situation. As you can see, I keep pulling alongside Steve just to check in on him, hoping that he's okay. Thought he might be coming off at this junction, but didn't decide to, causing a massive pileup. He does stop briefly, but then carries on driving. This is what makes me think Steve is sad. Had he been paying attention, he would have noticed the crash, and I'm sure he would have asked if he could help. However, after pulling away slowly, he slams his foot to the floor. I assume we're heading to another job, so follow closely. But the strangest thing happens. As soon as I catch up and get close, his vehicle seems to be failing him and slows right back down to 10 miles an hour. As you can see, I hang back to see if this encourages faster driving for him, but it doesn't. He stays at 10 miles an hour the entire way. I genuinely had no idea what he was doing. However, just at that moment, another police chase goes past. Steve jumps in to help straight away, pulling out his gun and trying to assist. And then we're in hot pursuit, trying to catch up with them. I think the gunfire really scared the public, so they all accelerated to try and get home quickly. And as day turned into night, disaster struck. Steve has a massive accident, and I'm genuinely worried that that could be the end of Steve. And then I hear his voice. He's alive and he's still focusing on work. He turns his lights off and continues driving at a very, very slow pace. This is very concerning because now people aren't drawn to him and aren't afraid of the lights. And then a bike zooms past. We're back in pursuit straight away. Even if Steve's car isn't working properly, he's not going to let people get away with breaking the law. and then he slams into the back of the bike, which you would have assumed eliminated the person, however it doesn't. So he goes out, pulls out his weapon, and fires. And then he almost gets hit by a car. Steve is genuinely putting his life at risk to help out others. A motorcyclist falls off his bike and then decides to walk home across 2 lanes of traffic and jumps out the way. After deciding Steve's done a good job leaving a dead body in the middle of the road, he drives off without his lights on. I'm very worried for Steve at this point because he's not driving safely and he could get hurt. I try and follow him closely so that other road users know there's a hazard. However, people are still zooming past on the left-hand side. As you can see, he's really slowing down this lorry to the right of us, and he doesn't seem to be checking his rearview mirror because if he could see, he would probably pull over. And then, out of the blue, his lights go on, but he doesn't accelerate. I'm wondering if we're on the way to another job, but his car's not working properly. I'm really not sure what's going on at this point. And then it clicks. I assume there's a problem further ahead on the road, so he turns on his lights to once again slow down the traffic and reducing the danger the public is in. With this in mind, I zoom ahead of Steve to see what the problem is. However, by doing this, something very strange happened. As I drove away, you could still hear the sirens, then suddenly they disappear. I turn around to see if Steve's okay, and he's gone. I can't find him anywhere. I drive around for my usual 5-10 minutes looking for him, and he's definitely not back here. So I turn around and drive forwards. Maybe he zoomed past me, who knows? But Steve was nowhere to be seen. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye!